Ever stop to think about uh, the hidden hands shaping what we watch? It's not always the stars. Often, it's the people behind them, pulling string.
Absolutely, the power broker.
Exactly. And if you want to really get how Hollywood works, quickly, thoroughly, without getting bogged down, well, that's what we're doing here.
We're diving deep.
A deep dive, yeah, into two absolute legends.
Mm-hmm.
William Morris Agency and the Music Corporation of America, WMA and MCA.
Giants.
Total giants. Our mission really is to see how they weren't just agents signing actors. They literally built modern show business. Vaudeville, movies, TV.
They shipped it all.
We're using Frank Rose's book, The Agency, as our guide. And trust me, there's some real surprises in how different they were, their styles, their impact.
It's a fascinating contrast, especially where WMA started. Late 19th, early 20th century New York.
Vaudeville.
A cutthroat world back then.
Oh, incredibly competitive. You had the Keith Albee circuit, which, for anyone listening, they basically ran vaudeville. Huge chain of theaters, massive power over performers.
A near monopoly, pretty much. And William Morris, he took them on directly. These vaudeville wars, they really painted Morris as this champion for the little guy. Independent artists, agents.
Fighting the establishment.
Against the robber barons of vaudeville, you could say.
Yeah, and he wasn't just talk. He was booking acts into independent spots. Proctor's Fifth Avenue, Hammerstein's Victoria.
Places outside that Keith Albee control.
Right, giving performers something new.
Yeah.
More consistent work, which was huge back then.
And here's where it gets interesting. Edward F. Albee, Keith's right-hand man, basically.
The competition.
He actually tried to get Morris to join their booking office, the VMA office.
Wow. If you can't beat him, absorb him.
Exactly. It shows how much clout Morris was building. Albee saw his strength. Of course, the offer was framed like, oh, William, you're working too hard.
Right. Concern trolling.
Pretty much. Morris saw right through it, though. Didn't take the bait. Knew it was a conflict.
And then there's that amazing Will Rogers story. Morris tries to retire, briefly.
And Rogers, just starting out, literally ropes him back in with a lariat in his office.
It sounds made up, but apparently not. What a way to make an impression.
Can you imagine? But Morris saw the talent, put him straight to work, booked him all over the Northeast.
It just shows Morris couldn't really stay away. That pull of show business.
It was in his blood. And Rogers' early success, that really helped solidify the agency's reputation early on.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing. He had a health scare, went up to Saranac Lake.
But even there, his mind's on business.
Totally. Hears about a deal that went sour, feels his business dropped, and boom, he's right back in the city. With a scheme.
Resilience.
And this time he's thinking alliance. With Abraham Lincoln Erlanger, a real titan in the theater world, aiming high.
Always strategic. He knew he needed powerful allies. Setbacks didn't stop him.
And get this twist. He'd booked passage on the Lusitania.
Oh, wow.
Had to cancel last minute. Days later, it sinks. So Albee, his rival, might have accidentally saved his life just by distracting him somehow.
That's incredible. Fate, I guess. Shows how tangled their lives were, even as rivals.
But eventually, the agency did hit a rough patch. Had closed theaters, let people go, hard times.
One guy stayed. Abe Lastfogel.
Legendary loyalty. Tells Morris, as long as your name is on the door, I'm working for you.
That's commitment.
And Morris saw it. Made Lastfogel his personal secretary. Now, that feels pivotal. Like the future of the agency is right there.
It absolutely was. Lastfogel's loyalty then was crucial. Support for Morris, sure, but it set the stage for his own rise, and it shows the kind of connection Morris could inspire.
And Morris wasn't just about business deals. He founded the Jewish Theatrical Guild. This was a direct response to Henry Ford's awful anti-Semitic stuff.
A really ugly time. Prejudice was rampant.
Morris felt he had to do something. And he also worked to get a sanatorium going at Saranac Lake for vaudevillians with TB.
It shows a real social conscience, a sense of community, caring for the performers, not just booking them.
So looking ahead, the agency's future starts getting shaped by two very different guys. Bill Morris Jr. and Abe Lastfogel.
Night and day, almost.
Yeah. Young Morris, the playboy, living it up. Spontaneous trips to Europe. There's that story about him wiring home for cash from the middle of the Atlantic because a party went on too long.
Classic. While Lastfogel is just laser-focused, dedicated, driving the actual business day-to-day.
It's such a contrast.
Stark contrast. Lastfogel was the engine. Young Morris seemed more interested in, well, the perks.
And Lastfogel's personal life changes too. He marries Frances Arms, a successful vaudeville singer.
Yeah, she was actually earning more than him at the time.
Right, but they connected. And their wedding, apparently, was this huge, lavish 5-hour affair, way bigger than planned.
It shows his personal side growing along with his career. Marrying a performer probably gave him even deeper insight.
But young Morris, his lack of business savvy really shows in that Zeppo Marx story with Adolf Zukor at Paramount.
Oh, yeah. Zeppo's trying to sell the Marx Brothers' whole catalog for peanuts, basically.
And Morris Jr. just fumbles it. Zukor's practically like, take my money. But Morris Jr. can't close the deal. It's almost painful.
It really highlights how crucial negotiating skill is. Knowing the value, connections get you in the door, but you need the business sense, which young Morris seemed to lack there.
Then, a major shift. Will Morris has a stroke, hands the reins over to Lastfogel and Bill Morris Jr.
A real changing of the guard.
And they split it geographically. Lastfogel stays in New York, still the center for a lot of things. Bill Jr. heads west to L.A.
Which reflects the industry shift, right? Hollywood and the movies becoming huge. They needed a strong presence there.
And Bill Jr.'s L.A. life. Villavancha? Sounds completely Hollywood. Big parties, Charlie Chaplin popping by.
Living the dream.
Meanwhile, Lastfogel's back east, grinding away. With his new assistant, Sammy Weisbord, another key figure emerges.
Sets up that bi-coastal operation. Different challenges, different vibes in each office. And yeah, Weisbord, that's the next generation starting to form.
Now, James Cagney, huge star. Signed with Morris, blew up in gangster flicks at Warner Bros.
Iconic.
But then, a contract dispute. And here's a shocker. Morris sues Cagney for commission after he leaves, and the judge rules against the agency.
Whoa. That's big. Challenges that whole 10% standard.
Yeah, it basically said the agency's cut wasn't automatic if the actor walked away. A real precedent.
Definitely shifted the power dynamic a bit, gave actors more leverage.
And all this is happening against the backdrop of the studios getting more powerful and the Great Depression hitting hard.
Massive upheaval, total economic pressure.
So that stock swap deal between Paramount and the Morris office, they undid it.
Yeah, the logic was basically, this is no time for a studio and a talent agency to be married.
Makes sense. Too risky. Independence was key for survival then.
For both sides, really. Studios were struggling too, couldn't afford those ties.
And then you have agents like Myron Selznick, a very different breed.
Aggressive, cutthroat, some would say.
Selling stars left and right, but apparently not well liked in Hollywood. Agents generally got a bad rap, called awful things, flesh peddlers, leeches.
Yeah, Selznick was more ruthless, less personal. And those terms, they really show the tension between the talent and the deal makers.
Amidst all this, you start seeing early attempts at unionization. Even agents like Bill Morris Jr. were on some early committees.
Trying to organize. But the actors themselves, initially resistant.
Right. They sent a telegram to FDR blaming studio management for the industry's problems.
But at the same time, you had these huge star salaries next to actors barely scraping by. Massive disparity.
Made it really complicated. Hard to get everyone on the same page for unions back.
Absolutely. And just as all that's swirling, the Morris agency makes a move. Physically.
Off the Sunset Strip into Beverly Hills. More. Understated.
Yeah, the new building was classier, maybe, but quieter. More like Lastfogel's style. Less flashy.
A move towards respectability, perhaps. Civility.
Exactly. Which sets up a perfect contrast with the next big player, Jules C. Stein and MCA.
Oh, yeah. Totally different vibe. Stein radiated power. Maybe not warmth, but definitely power.
His backstory is key. Worked his way through school, leading an orchestra.
Played music.
Yeah, but then realized booking the bands was where the real money was. Not playing in them. That shows his mindset right there. Entrepreneurial from the start.
So MCA starts in music booking.
Yeah.
Different roots than WMA's vaudeville beginnings.
Right. Founded in 24, and they just exploded in the music biz, then moved aggressively into pictures.
And that nickname, the Octopus, tells you everything.
It really does. They were financially involved in everything their clients did. Booking, recording, investments.
Sounds incredibly controlling. Almost like a conflict of interest, even then.
Oh, I raised eyebrows.
Yeah.
Their model was way more integrated than WMA's. More control, more revenue streams for MCA. But yeah, ethically questionable for some.
And then boom, 1962, they're forced out of the agency business, have to split off, become MCA Universal.
Massive. The Justice Department antitrust suit changed the whole industry structure. No more agency and production under one roof like that.
So Stein, power. Lastfogel, more paternal, maybe. Quieter.
Different styles entirely. And here's a fascinating move by Lastfogel. He hires Willard Alexander,
From MCA.
a top guy at MCA, to run the Morris Agency's new band department, poaching talent from the main rival.
Bold. Suggests maybe things weren't perfect inside MCA. Or just Lastfogel being strategic.
Probably both. Lastfogel saw music's importance, knew Alexander was the guy, and maybe Alexander saw an opportunity.
Let's shift gears a bit. Talk about the lifestyle. The glamour, but also the grit, maybe.
It was definitely bi-coastal for Lastfogel and Francis Arms. Permanent hotel suites, Essex House in New York, Beverly Wilshire in L.A.
Always in the mix. Nightlife, events.
Absolutely. That was part of the job at that level. Constant travel, seeing and being seen, close to clients, close to the power players.
And speaking of clients, Lana Turner. Her discovery, her early career, that was actually Zeppo Marx's agency handling her initially.
Right, and her story really shows the studio power back then, that sweater girl image, totally manufactured.
And Mayer stepping in about her pregnancy. Stars had so little control over their own lives and images.
Very little autonomy. The studios dominated. Agencies were powerful, sure, but they operated within that system.
Nightclubs were also huge for the Morris Agency, right? A constant business stream.
Absolutely vital. Places in LA like Slapsy Maxie's, Ciro's, Mocambo, all over the country, really. It was a training ground for talent, reliable income for the agency, bridge that gap from vaudeville to film and TV.
But while Lastfogel's navigating all that, Bill Morris Jr. is getting, well, more political. Left-leaning groups.
Which made Lastfogel uncomfortable, especially with the Red Scare brewing, and Morris Jr.'s connection with Ruth Rubin, an old friend, maybe complicated things too.
Yeah, you can see the personal and political tensions starting to simmer within the agency itself. Cold War era polarization hitting home.
Then comes the big one, television. Total game changer.
And the Morris Agency jumps right in. Texaco Star Theater with Milton Berle. Massive hit. Uncle Milty.
Huge. Bill Morris had actually predicted vaudevillians would do well on TV. The live feel, the visuals, he called it.
He was spot on. TV was a whole new platform. New money, new power dynamics. Berle's success proved its potential immediately.
But early TV was a battlefield. NBC versus CBS.
The talent raids.
Exactly. CBS, with help from MCA's Lou Wasserman, went after NBC's biggest stars. A real war for dominance.
Shows how crucial the agencies were in that fight. Controlling the talent meant controlling the networks almost. Wasserman and MCA were definitely making moves in TV.
And look at Ben Griefer's story. He's managing a Paramount movie theater.
Sees Berle's TV show emptying his theater.
Right. So he jumps ship, joins the Morris Agency, and helps put together the Buick-Burles show. Adapting to the market change right there.
Smart move. Shows how fast things were changing. You had to keep up.
As the TV side grew, the agency moved headquarters again. Mutual life building. Bigger, more prominent. A sign of their growing clout.
Meanwhile, out west, Las Vegas is transforming, but not always cleanly.
No. Organized crime was deeply involved early on. The Desert Inn, Thunderbird, Flamingo. Figures like Mo Dalitz, Myra Lansky.
Betty.
Right. Even Senator McCarran seemed tied in. It was a complex, shady scene agencies had to navigate if they booked acts there.
And personally, John Hyde's life remained messy. His involvement with Marilyn Monroe later, it's a reminder of the drama behind the Hollywood facade.
Yeah, Hyde's story is kind of a cautionary tale. Ambition, complicated agent-client relationships. It could get intense.
Then things get really dark. The Red Scare, HUAC investigations in Hollywood.
Chilling time.
Yeah.
HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee, going after alleged communists. Devastated careers, ruined lives.
Cast a long, dark shadow. Fear, suspicion, paranoia. People forced into impossible choices.
And Bill Morris Jr. himself got caught in the spotlight. His past ties, like with the National Council of American-Soviet Friendship,
made him a target. Even prominent people like Curtis Lamont were scrutinized. Shows how politics and entertainment were dangerously tangled.
The industry reaction was complicated. Fear, mostly. Trying to appease the committee. Johnston, the MPAA head, asks, are we mice or men?
But legally, in California, studios could fire people for political beliefs. No real protection.
So you saw a lot of moral compromise. Self-preservation kicking in. Awful costs for individuals.
Yet somehow, talent could still break through. Judy Holliday. Born Yesterday. Huge hit, even though she was labeled with pink ideas.
Her talent was undeniable. Shows that sometimes great entertainment can transcend the politics. Sometimes.
But the pressure to name names, it was intense. Elia Kazan being urged by Zanuck to cooperate.
Agonizing decisions, betrayals with lifelong consequences, terrible ethical dilemmas, loyalty versus survival.
Edward G. Robinson. Never even a party member, but accused. Felt totally duped and used. His career just tanked.
Tragic. Shows the collateral damage. The accusations alone could destroy you. Unfairness was rampant.
And right in the middle of all this chaos, Bill Morris Jr. resigns. Suddenly.
The timing is certainly suggestive. Why then? Pressure. Internal conflict. We can only speculate, really. Shrouded in the fear of the times.
Okay, let's shift to something brighter. Frank Sinatra's comeback.
Huge comeback. Dropped by Columbia Records. Seemed washed up.
Then signs with Capitol, hooks up with Nelson Riddle, and boom, whole new sound. From here to eternity, the movie helps too. Phoenix from the ashes.
Absolutely. Showed the power of reinvention. Finding the right artistic partners, Riddle redefined his sound, made him a legend all over again.
And television keeps evolving. Package deals become the big thing. Hugely lucrative for agencies.
Oh, yeah. Those packaging fees are serious money.
Explain that a bit more. What was a package deal back then?
Okay, so basically, the agency wouldn't just represent the actor. They'd bundle everything, the star, maybe the writer, the director, sometimes even the show concept itself, and sell that whole package to a network.
Ah, one-stop shopping for the network.
Exactly. And the agency got their usual 10% on the talent, plus a hefty fee, like 10% of the show's budget, for putting the package together. Huge control, huge profits.
You see guys like Harry Kalkheim and Tom Parker having early success with Eddie Arnold.
Oh.
Parker, described as a carny barker. Unique style.
Definitely unconventional. That carnival background gave him a different, maybe more aggressive approach. Worked for Arnold and obviously later for, well, Elvis.
MCA, naturally, leaned hard into packaging. Always aggressive, even forcing casting changes, like on The Young Lions.
They really leveraged their power, used their star clients to dictate terms to studios, maximize their own gain. It showed how dominant they'd become.
WMA got in on it too, though. Packaged Sinatra films like The Joker is Wild, A Hole in the Head. Burt Allenberg was key there.
Right. Maybe not quite as overtly aggressive as MCA, but WMA definitely saw the value, used their own strong client list to get those package deals done.
And Sinatra leads us to the Rat Pack, or the Klan, as they sometimes called it.
Iconic. The coolest guys in the room. Sinatra, Martin, Davis Jr., Lawford, Bishop. Bogart and Bacall were sort of precursors.
Those Vegas shows at the Sands. Summit meeting. Legendary stuff. More than just entertainment, a cultural moment.
Totally. Talent, charisma, that rebellious cool. It captivated everyone, cemented Sinatra's legendary status even further.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing for the agencies. FCC hearings, the quiz show scandals, that brought a lot of heat.
Big time scandal. Rigged shows. Exposed a darker side of TV. And yeah, some William Morris produced shows got pulled off the air. Bad publicity.
And then that unbelievable wiretapping thing at the Morris office in New York. George Wood, FBI involved. Sounds like a movie plot.
Seriously unethical stuff.
Yeah.
Possibly illegal. Wiretaps, exploitation, really damaged the agency's reputation, raised serious questions.
Yet, through it all, Sammy Weisbord is testifying to the SEC, defending package deals. Still believed in them.
He was committed to that model, despite the growing scrutiny from regulators and the public.
And you really see contrasting styles emerge inside WMA. Weisbord, the aggressive operator.
Versus Phil Weltman, more focused on nurturing talent, developing people, like a young Barry Diller who came through their trainee program.
That trainee system produced a lot of future execs, didn't it?
Oh yeah, a real breeding ground. Showed different paths to success, hard-charging deals versus long-term talent development.
Okay, moving into the 60s and 70s. Hollywood keeps changing. Steve McQueen, huge star, but difficult.
Famously demanding. Conflicts on set, like mad world, managing stars like that. A real balancing act. Accommodate them, but keep the production on track.
Broadway has a big comeback in the early 60s.
Yeah, a real resurgence. And WMA was right there, representing playwrights like Edward Albee, Neil Simon, directors, and musicals. Funny Girl with Streisand was creating huge buzz.
Showed their reach. Film, TV, stage, covering all the bases.
And back on TV, Sheldon Leonard makes a bold move casting Bill Cosby in I Spy.
Groundbreaking. But they faced hurdles, right? Color TV was new. Some affiliates resisted a black lead.
Absolutely. Norman Brokaw at WMMA was crucial in packaging that show, navigating the network politics, getting it made. Showed the power of packaging to push boundaries.
Then you had shows really testing censorship. The Marx Brothers clashing with CBS constantly.
Pushing the envelope. reflecting the cultural shifts of the late 60s, TV getting more relevant, more experimental, leading to conflict with the old guard.
And then Laugh In just exploded. Total phenomenon.
Wildly successful, captured the zeitgeist.
Even casting could be intense. Warren Beatty on Bonnie and Clyde. Very demanding about who played Clyde.
But he ends up working with Arthur Penn, a Morris director, shows how agencies connect talent, facilitate those key collaborations even with demanding stars.
Late 60s, early 70s, power shifts again. Howard Hughes buys up Vegas hotels. Reclusively.
Yeah, his arrival marked a shift away from the visible mob influence towards more corporate ownership. Sinatra actually had a big falling out with Hughes then. Sign of the changing times.
McQueen's still a megastar, Le Mans. But his personal life, getting rockier.
Yeah, reports of substance abuse, more turbulence, the pressures of that level of fame, changing social norms. It took a toll on many.
And then sports stars become huge commodities. Mark Spitz after the Olympics. Norman Brokaw brokers a ton of endorsements fast.
That really kicked off the modern era of athlete endorsements, huge money. Agencies like WMA saw the opportunity and jumped in, brokering fame itself.
But internally at WMA, things are shifting too. Agents like Shukat leave over commission splits.
Disagreements about money. And the agency starts rethinking that old motto, no act too big, no act too small. Maybe focusing more on the big earners.
Agent Litgay even resigns in protest. Suggests real tension about the agency's direction. A potential move away from its roots.
You see the contrast again. More Stoller, more administrative on the West Coast. Sammy Weisbord, still the aggressive operator. Different styles, probably some friction.
And Abe Lastfogel's influence is fading. The old guard stepping back. Younger leaders making calls, like getting into sports representation.
Right. They appoint Burla Adams to head WMA Sports. But Adam himself wasn't that keen on sports, apparently. Left for Motown eventually. Shows it was still a transition period.
Diana Ross leaves the Supremes. Huge solo career in music and film. WMA helps manage that transition.
Another example of music and film crossover. Agencies facilitating those big career moves.
Phil Weltman has ideas about future leadership. Conflict over someone named Lee Stevens. The New York Times even does a piece looking back at the agency's history around this time.
Internal power struggles. Differing visions for the future. The Times piece probably framed those shifts for the public.
O&A.
Yeah.
Enter Sue Mengers. Lom Mengers. A force of nature.
Oh, yeah. New breed of agent. Fierce, connected, unconventional. Handled huge deals for Bogdanovich, Faye Dunaway. Her dinner parties were legendary power scenes.
Shook things up. A more personality-driven style of agenting.
Stan Kamen takes over the motion picture department at WMA. Big job. Hollywood's evolving fast. Can WMA keep up?
And then comes a major threat. CAA. Creative Artists Agency. Started by defectors from WMA.
Martin Baum joins them. Super aggressive recruiting talent, emphasizing teamwork, supposedly a lesson from Weltman himself.
And Ron Meyer's networking skills at CAA, they became formidable very quickly. A real challenge to the old guard like WMA and ICM.
Absolutely. A new era of intense competition. CAA changed the game.
Norman Brokaw finds his niche as a fame broker, representing people outside entertainment. Senator Sam Ervin, President Ford's family.
Blurring the lines. Celebrity, politics, public life. Agencies managing fame itself, wherever it popped up, expanding their reach.
Barbara Walters moving to ABC, her huge specials. Another example. Journalists as packaged celebrity.
Exactly. TV personalities becoming massive stars. Agencies capitalizing on that fame in new ways.
Then, a sad landmark. Elvis Presley dies. Chaos at Graceland. The end of an era.
Profound impact. And Colonel Parker, still involved managing the huge estate, shows the enduring power of managers, even after death.
The late 70s. Studios like United Artists are struggling. Apocalypse Now production. Legendary nightmare.
Cost overruns, delays. Stan Kamen at WMA got involved with films like that. And also Heaven's Gate, another notorious flop. High stakes, big risks in filmmaking then.
Despite all this turbulence, Sammy Weisbord calls 1979 the agency's greatest year. Maybe putting a brave face on things?
Possibly. They were shifting assets like real estate to Wilmore, and The Cosby Show is coming, which would be massive for them and NBC. So resilience, maybe? Still finding hits.
But behind the scenes, Stan Kamen is seriously ill. They're trying to keep it quiet.
And that story about the junior agent fired for calling John Voight directly shows how rigid the hierarchy still was. Loyalty, protocol, still paramount.
Weisbord holds a meeting about the future. And that quote about loyalty. Loyalty is something you pay for.
Wow. Pretty stark transactional view. Reflects the tough, maybe cynical reality of this by then.
The movie department is still struggling. They try to recruit new leaders. Mike Medavoy, Freddie Fields, no takers. Bertie Brillstein weighs in.
Shows deep problems. Couldn't attract top leadership. WMA's film division seemed adrift.
And then a truly bizarre incident.
And
The parking garage superintendent arrested for dealing cocaine. Right there at the agency.
such strange days. A reminder that unexpected dramas can hit any big organization.
There were some movie successes, though. Three Men and a Baby, Lethal Weapon, Untouchables, Glimmers of Hope.
Right, showed they could still deliver hits. But then, Ed L'Amato leaves. Goes to ICM.
Panic. He was seen as a huge asset, big loss, signaled real weakness in the movie division, raised fears they couldn't hold on to top agents.
So they bring in Sue Mengers to head the department.
Bold move, but maybe too late. Or her style was already dated. Even Ray Stark was critical.
Yeah, it was a tough situation. She struggled to adapt. Challenging time for her and the agency.
A new, more powerful committee forms internally, trying to right the ship. Elaine Goldsmith starts her mentorship under Mengers around then.
Attempting decisive leadership amidst the turmoil.
They have successes like Driving Miss Daisy, developing Dances with Wolves with Costner. But CAA and Michael Ovitz are just dominating. The competition is intense.
They could still make big movies happen, but Ovitz was casting a very long shadow. Huge threat.
Eventually, John Burnham and Mike Simpson are named co-heads of movies, essentially pushing Mengers aside.
She was furious, understandably. Clear vote of no confidence, more internal strife.
Then the dam breaks. Mass exodus of movie agents. Tony Howard, John Pytak. Key people leaving for ICM and CAA.
Devastating. A real crisis. Agency tries to downplay it, but the impact was huge. Raised questions about their survival in film.
Jerry Katzman takes over as president, starts reforms, finally brings in formal agent contracts, modernizing.
Necessary steps. Trying to stabilize things, move away from the old handshake deals, address the issues that led to the departures.
And then a huge move. William Morris merges with Triad.
Even though Triad had its own financial problems, a real sign of the consolidation pressures, survival move in a tough landscape.
And through it all, Phil Weltman is still around, watching, reflecting, connecting with younger guys like Ovitz, who he'd seen come up. He saw the whole arc.
An incredible perspective, witness to the entire evolution of the modern agency world, a living link to that history.
So wrapping this all up, the big picture, you've got William Morris Agency, born fighting monopolies, built on loyalty, maybe a bit more paternalistic.
Right. Contrast that with MCA, driven by Stein's raw ambition, that octopus model, sometimes ruthless.
And both left this massive, indelible mark, shaped entertainment from vaudeville stages to TV screens.
Yeah, what's really striking is how their stories mirror the industry's shifts, live performance to film, the explosion of star power, the rise of finance and deal-making as central forces, Morris fighting monopolies early on, kind of foreshadowed later antitrust stuff, and just Stein versus Lastfogel, two totally different blueprints for power.
You know, thinking about their whole journey, the rise and fall, the power shifts, it makes you wonder about today. With streaming giants, influencers, AI, who are the hidden power brokers now?
Good question. What are the new networks of influence? Are there modern-day Steins and Lastfogels out there, maybe operating differently, shaping what we'll be watching tomorrow?
Who's pulling the strings in this new landscape? Definitely something to keep thinking about.